on the whole, it's met my expectations.
Yeah. So yeah, we are supposedly live. We'll see if
On
YouTube. Just
okay,
YouTube.
I'll check.
We'll see. It says 08.
On the whole,
hey, looks like we're, of course, for some reason Firefox decided to tell me all kinds of stuff. Right. Wow. The Geeky Gamer Podcast is actually live. I am extremely surprised that I was able to get this to work. Now, here's the thing. Do I remember how to, because I did this so quickly, do I remember what I named the little scene so that people can see us? I don't know. I'm going to be guessing. So that's what's happening. Right. So really quick, just some technical stuff, which we normally take care of prior, but guess what? I was taking care of my technical stuff. Whoever's on Discord, which means all of us, you need to go to streamer mode. That way that sound stops. This includes me, because I'm not on it either. But like every time that like doot occurs, then everyone hears it. How you get there is
Did you hear that?
No. You go to the little cog thing at the bottom left of your screen, and then it'll open up settings. And if you scroll down, you can see streamer mode. You click on that, and the very top option is enable streamer mode. And that means it'll turn off all those sounds. If you have any trouble, let me know.
Success.
Sweet. We can thank Mr. Ken Howl for that sexiness. Right.
Whoop, whoop.
Wowie. Wowie. What an intro. So there actually is an intro. Do either of you remember what it is? I'm so angry right now. I can't see straight.
Oh, I remember it.
Yeah. Let's go on. Spit that out.
Yeah. Today's a Geeky Gamer Podcast. Listen to us. Hear our voices. Take it all in. It's going to be great.
There we go. I had to scroll through.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh my god, it's so good. This is going to be a shit show. Normally, it's not like this. Normally, we have Ken Howl here, who is Couchfire Media Production, and he is so much better at the technology than I am. He actually has like a stream deck, and
so
he's got it down.
and
we can just acknowledge somebody other than you normally does the tech stuff, and let's go on to talking.
Yeah.
We don't have to waste any more time bitching.
Right. I see that you are a dad. I'm not. This is the Geeky Gamer Podcast, and basically we're a bunch of gamers who happen to talk about geeky stuff. It's pretty unadulterated. With us tonight, or today, wherever you are, is Mr. Daniel Huffaker. And you had several names that you wanted me to go by, or to introduce you as, but I think I'm going to let you do that. Huffaker.
Oh, you want me to say that off?
Yeah, I'm gonna let you say your introduction off.
Okay. Will asked what I wanted to be billed as, and I said Their Royal Majesty Daniel Huffaker, Monarch of the Epic Games, Mid-Combat Changer of Diapers, Dungeon Master of Young and Less Young, Long Reign the Crown.
See, you did it a lot
and
better.
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Did it a lot better than
I didn't want to overwhelm Will. Clearly it was too much anyway.
Oh, too much. Yeah, so for everyone listening on the stream, assuming that you are, sorry about the buffering. My computer is from 2013. Hey, Hulker and Drizzle, why don't you introduce yourselves?
My name is Daniel Hulker, and tonight I will be playing myself.
And I'm the Drizzle, and I will be playing Kin's role tonight. I'm co-host or something. Nope.
What?
I'm pretending to be Kin.
All right, great. Yeah. So Huffaker, we've known each other for a while. Who are you?
Yep. I'm all right.
No, who are you?
Oh, who am I?
Yeah, who are you?
Let's see. I am not quite 40. I have been a forever DM since 2003. So that's 20 years now. I enjoy
21 years,
board
baby.
games. I enjoy real-time strategy. And father of 3. All 3 of my kids have had their diapers changed while I've been running combats and stuff, because the deal with my wife was you can still play, but you got to take the kids with you. And sometimes that involved other dads who didn't get to play very often. And so they brought their kids, and the kids had a play date while we rolled dice. And,
I can actually attest to this. When you were still living in Kentucky, you, I don't know if it was, I think you said, "Hey, wait, I gotta change."
Yeah, I have laid them down on the floor and changed their butts while still saying, "All right, what number did you get? That's a miss. That's a hit. Next." And just kept it going. We have played a ridiculous number of games with Disney shows in the background.
How'd that go?
Fine. The only time that it had a real in-game influence was once when Tangled was playing, and we had a preteen at the table, and he was half paying attention to Tangled, half paying attention to the game, and next thing I know, he's attacking things with a skillet. And claiming that that was not inspired by Rapunzel's favored weapon being a skillet. But we all know better.
Tangled is an awesome movie. I accidentally saw it.
At last you saw the light.
Maybe. It's an awesome movie. I was actually like affected by it. Been a long time since
You should check out Moana and Encanto. They're both pretty good.
I haven't seen either
They
one.
also both, yeah, I bet. But they're actually really good, and you can draw quest inspirations from them. Disney movies are ridiculously useful for ripping them off within your campaign. Also, it's one of those things where when you do it and the player figures out that's what you did, they feel like they've discovered some great secret. Even though we all rip off other media all the time, that's just part of it because they're all heroes' journeys. They're all based on the same stuff anyway. But sometimes I'm blatant about it and actually just straight up use Disney things in the game. Here's a fun one.
Like what?
I had one player whose character was a bard, and his whole story was that when he graduated Bard College and went home, the love of his life and her father had completely disappeared. And I was like, so what's the guy's name? What's her name? What's going on with this? And he's like, well, I don't know. That's just my backstory, and you can do with it what you want. And I confirmed multiple times with him that this was the case before I decided that dad's name was Geppetto. And when that got figured out and they found out that he owed the Blue Fairy for having animated his child, and when the Blue Fairy, who I also decided was Alice, sent her Cheshire Cat to go collect on this as her avatar, my Alice became an archfey.
Oh yeah, of course.
And yeah, and Wunderland was her own special realm. But the Cheshire Cat was her emissary. And when the cat came to collect on the debt, he and the daughter bounced, and that's why they weren't home. And they discovered this as a side thing later, and everybody else made fun of him for having... Yeah. Everyone else was teasing him for having been in love with Pinocchio. He was pretty fun.
Yeah, that's the Cheshire Cat is maybe he's not my favorite character out of fiction, but pretty fucking close. Someone's in the chat saying
I
we're
used him a
laggy.
bunch
I
as a
to the chat
tabaxi with a lot of powers.
to the chat. I understand it's laggy. I'm on a 2013 MacBook Air. Normally we have Ken Howl kicking it on like some really good stuff, but we can't do anything about it tonight. Sorry. If the audio is good, then we'll be fine. But the video is going to be shit-tastic. Right. We do have some questions for you and all these kinds of things. I know that I could just let you loose, Huffaker, and tell us everything about campaigns because you've run a ton of campaigns. Really quick though, I want to get Drizzle and Hulker's history. Just who are you guys with your gaming? And answer that question as much as you want, ladies. Tonight they are helping me host since Ken is traveling. So we'll start with the Driz.
I am, or the in the chat they said they may want to try to lower the bit rate to 2,500.
What's up, Bill? Bill Allen was one of our former guests. Very awesome dude. Had some very good news on Twitter, by the way. One of his students just got a pretty cool award. Yeah, Bill, I can't lower the rate while we're streaming. I would have to restart. So if it's really, really, really bad, like on the audio, then I will do that. Just let us know. All right.
Yeah, I'm the Drizzle. I've been playing for a few years now, but not a whole lot of campaigns. I only had one long campaign, which was Rich Run Fay, which then turned into the Red Writ. And I had a bunch of smaller ones that all petered out after like a couple of months. But I don't have a lot of experience in the gaming world, in the role-playing gaming world, but I do in video games and that sort of stuff.
What kind of video games?
On to you, Hulker.
No, what kind of video games?
I play, like my favorite type series is the Far Cry. I like the stealth stuff where you try to take everything out without alerting anyone and being secretive about it. Me and my brother and friend are playing Payday right now, where we're trying to steal paintings and stuff like that without alerting the cops, and it's pretty fun. I like the stealth stuff, like not getting detected and doing stuff under the watchful eyes of people that don't know what's going on.
All right,
did you do Mass Effect?
No, I didn't. I started playing Mass Effect, but I didn't get into, like, in the video game world, I didn't get a lot into the MMORPGs. Just because it's like I like to play with people I know or just against the computer.
Most of it was just single player, but I know I tried to put it in.
I got to the point where like it got into like the place and there were all these other players there and I was like, oh, I'm out. Sorry, guys. But yeah, I don't know. I just liked playing against the computer and stuff by myself as opposed to with strangers. Because I tried to play, what was that superhero game? Like, it was one of the first ones that came out where you played online and you created your own superhero and stuff like that. And before DC or Marvel had any of them, City of Heroes or something like that.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, I played it for a little bit, but it just not that good at that.
And what about you, Hulker?
All right, for video games, I started off with an Atari 2600 and a Commodore 64. I got really frustrated, so I never really got into any of those games. And eventually I got a Nintendo, and I was more or less a Nintendo guy for up through the GameCube. I'll never forget, I got Super Mario 64 3 days after it was supposed to hit the US stores. I somehow got it from the Walmart. I didn't do anything for the next 2 weeks until I beat that game. Anyways, as far as role-playing games, I started playing Dungeons and Dragons for a quick yeah.
Still
I
works.
started playing. That's a Super Nintendo cartridge of Final Fantasy, right?
Final Fantasy 2.
Yeah. I started playing role-playing games. I played Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition back in the day with the THAC0 and everything. Don't ask me too many questions about it because it's been a long time. I very quickly moved on to a few campaigns in D&D 3rd edition and up. I did, however, have an interesting experience for a couple of years. I used to play text-based MUDs, multi-user dimensions. These were or multi-user dungeons. I don't know if anyone else here has ever played them, but they worked marvelously over dial-up. So
that's an accomplishment.
They were essentially text-based D&D simulators, and a lot of effort was put into these games because that's kind of all there is, right? And what was really cool about these games, especially before graphical MMORPGs showed up, was that because they were free and no one was making any money off of them, they could freely use copyrighted material. Kind of like what you were talking about earlier, Daniel.
Yeah, I can rip off Disney because no one's paying me.
Yeah, well, they didn't so much use Disney, but they used comic books. They used all sorts of other sources of myths and lore or whatever. And it was a lot of fun for a while until I, moved on, I guess. Sometime around 2009, I got invited to be a part of a LARP.
That would be where we met.
Yeah. That's where we met. And I have to say, Daniel, you were a great player in every LARP I was in. You always encouraged me, right? Gave me a ride to a couple of them.
Yeah, I did. You were on the way.
Yeah. And that's about it for as far as my role playing game history. We can get into all that stuff.
Yeah.
All right,
sorry,
shoot
guys,
your questions.
I'm putting out fires so that way I can actually be doing something. So
I noticed it turned red behind you with the fire.
Yeah. So
it was blue.
So we are not on video right now. Hopefully that clears up at least the audio. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah. Drizzle, I sent you a bunch of the questions. Will you ask some of those? I gotta do the tech stuff.
So, Huffaker, what does it mean to be a gamer?
I think to be a gamer, it just means that gaming is something that is a hobby you do that you identify enough with to, like, you do it enough and identify with it enough that it is part of who you are in your own mind. Like, I don't think there's a certain number of hours. I don't think there's a certain amount of experience. If someone plays enough baseball to say, I'm a baseball player, sure, they're a baseball player. Maybe not a professional, maybe not even amateur, but baseball is part of them. With gaming, whether it's tabletop, RPGs, any kind of console or PC, like whatever you're doing, if it is enough a part of you that you feel like that is who you are, sure, you're a gamer. You're welcome to love it as much as you want.
It's about identifying as that. So it's a part of you.
Yeah, if it is enough of you to be part of you, then you can claim to be a gamer.
What attracts you to different types of games?
So I like things that keep my brain working and can help me work on a puzzle or whatever. Like, I can get very into Minecraft when I let myself, because I will plan a project and I will have notebooks of my planned project. And for example, when Minecraft spawns a village, it has anywhere from 4 to 10 villagers normally in it. I was recently on a server where I decided I needed a bunch of villagers to trade with, and I was only half done with the project, and my villager population was about 130. That was while also running a mod of Mine Colony, which takes a lot of preparation and thought and layout. I used an Incan template and took over a mountain, and I had more than 100 colonists up on top of this mountain, with the village down in its shadow.
And what kind of project were you trying to create with all these people?
Oh, I was trying to make my own metropolis that was self-sustaining and that just worked. And with some of it, like, I was building things out of money. Literally, I had emerald sculptures. And the thing worked beautifully. It was going great. I just needed more time. With other stuff, like, I appreciate things that make my brain work, and I appreciate being able to roleplay and stuff. With tabletop, I like story over other stuff. When I run a game, part of what makes my games what they are is I have to maintain my own interest. If I'm bored with it, I know nobody else, well, I feel like nobody else is going to be having fun if I'm bored with it. That may or may not be true, but it means that I run the game at a level that maintains my own attention and keeps me thinking, what do I want to do next? How do I want to explore that? What are the options? And I do very open world games. I will come up with 5 to 10 ideas, and I will just have them as like an intro path. And then I will ask my players, of these possible vague categories, which is of the most interest to you, so that I don't spend the next 3 weeks imagining a bunch of stuff and you guys are like, nah, I don't want to do that. So these are the categories I'm excited about. Pick one, and that's what I will develop. And then we go down that path.
You said you've been running the games for about 20 years?
Yes. I have hit. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, no, you go ahead.
Well, I want to ask, are they all D&D?
Mostly. I've modified it a little bit when playing with little kids, though I gave them full 3.5 and character sheets when I did that. And then I did 5e. For the last 5 years, I've done 5e. I held on to 3 and 3.5 for a long time because I have a tote full of over 30 hardbacks. And, like, it throws out my back to move my books. That's how heavy the box is. And when you're that deep into it, you just don't switch over just because they decided that they wanted to make more money on selling new player handbooks.
That makes sense.
So yeah, it has mostly been D&D. I did a little bit with a game called Realms of Glory that, similar to Dreadlore, a friend of mine was trying to get it off the ground. I don't know that he had a whole lot of success with it, because I think he was trying to do too many things at once. But I've stuck to D&D because D&D is the easiest one to find other people to play with. And 5e's made it a lot simpler. I mean, the dragons are a lot weaker, but they're also pre-made. In 3.5, if you wanted to make a dragon, you basically were making a full character sheet for something that was probably going to get destroyed. And you could make some really interesting stuff. Like, I had one dragon that was able to cast greater invisibility and spider climb and swallow people whole from the ceiling above. It made for really interesting things, but you had to figure out based on this chart and that chart and everything, like based on their type and their size, what's the dice for their wing attack, what's the dice for their tail attack. It was a lot, and it was all different.
If it's going to be a party wipe, how much do you really have to fill out on the character sheet?
But it wasn't a party wipe. It was a significant challenge, and that was part of it, is balancing what's the party going to do with this. And there's Will and I have talked before, there's kind of, I feel like in gaming, tabletop gaming, there's kind of a social contract between the DM and the players. And part of that is the players are going to actually play the DM's game. Like, they have put in the time, they have put in the effort, they have showed up for you. You can do them the favor of mostly sticking to what they have prepared or things they can easily improvise. Like, to just straight up say, nah, that sucks, we're doing something else, is a violation of the social contract. You can at least play the session, and if you don't like the direction, let them plan something else next. I happen to be really good at improvising, so they don't violate that part of the social contract on me too often. But I'm also really experienced at this. On the DM side, the idea is, I may make this hard for you, but there will be a path to success. And if I don't intend for you to succeed, there will be some kind of parachute. Like, there is a way out of this. We're here to tell a collective story. I'm not your enemy. I'm not here to kill you. I have characters that want to kill you, but they're the challenge. And so there's a balance there and an expectation. When you play with people for a long time, you develop a level of trust. So, like I told you, I used Alice as an archfey. There was one game session where they went to Alice because the reason they went to Alice in the first place was one of them pulled from the deck of many things and got the Donjon. And I came up with this whole Alice thing in the first place because they were like, we're going to go find him and bring him back. And I had to go, well, where is he? So I decided that Alice the Archfey, that I hadn't used in the game at all before that, had been confined by other Archfey, and she was sending out the decks of many things, manufacturing them and putting them out into the multiverse to lure people back to her, so that as a Fey who thrive on bargains and thrive on people coming to them for things, she could rebuild her power and even send some of them out to capture her captors on the theory that once she caught them all, she could get out again. And this involved her capturing a lot of people. And when my players got there after fighting their way past the Frumious Bandersnatch and the Jub Jub Bird and a Jabberwock, they got to her in her little cottage and she was like, okay, defeat my avatar and whoever has their feet on the ground and is standing under their own power gets to leave with what they want while freeing this. But everybody else is my prisoner. And they agreed to it to help free their person, figuring we'll all be fine. We'll be standing under our own power. It'll be okay. Which they were right up until the avatar of Alice cast reverse gravity and threw them all up into the air. One of them beat the save, but had been shrunken because I had one of her legendary powers was she was throwing mushrooms at everybody, and I randomly rolled a die, and when the mushroom hit them, they either stayed the same, shrunk to tiny, or grew very large. And it was random, which was delightful. It was a lot of fun. But when one of them took Alice out in the air, the avatar of Alice, they won. They didn't, because only one party member was on the ground under their own power. Everybody else was up in the air and were captured. And if I had done that to a brand new group who didn't know me, they would be throwing a fit because, oh no, you caught us. This is a party wipe. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
But they know me. We have our social contract, and they knew, all right, we will ride this out and something will happen and it will work out. And it ended up being, that was the lead into the plot hooks. They went and caught 2 other Archfey for her. One of those Archfey was Jareth from the Labyrinth. They got to go run around and play several sessions. This one we did on Roll20. So they were wandering around the Labyrinth on Roll20 until they caught Jareth. And like I stuck Ludo and the Dwarf and like there were other cameos. And there were also multiple girls named Sarah running through this thing because there's that fun Reddit theme going through that Jareth just keeps. There was an original Sarah, and now he just keeps bringing Sarahs in from the multiverse. I decided to run with that too because that was fun. So they came across multiple Sarahs going through the Labyrinth. But that all happened because they trusted me enough to know if he's got us all captured, it's going to be fine. The same thing happened another time where they got arrested in the center of a city because they used Wish on the ship they were sailing to get out of a storm. But the guy doing the Wish said, I'm going to arrive at my destination. And their destination was a bank. It was a cloud giant bank, and the center of the financial world that they were on. And their ship suddenly appeared on the roof and slid down, ripping up a ton of shingles and fell into the city square. And the cloud giants arrested them for it. And they were willing to ride it out, knowing that there was a solution, not just we have to slay the giants before they can get us. Because we have a social contract. They know this isn't just rocks fall, you're dead. And so when you have that in place and everybody trusts each other, the game gets a lot more fun. You can do a lot more involved things. It can go longer because you're not adversaries. You're all working together to tell a collective story. I just happen to be the one running the not them.
Okay. I was going to ask. Sorry to interrupt. But how long do your campaigns normally last?
Most games I've had, depending on how often we can meet, last a couple of years. That game lasted 4 years, and we actually finished it. I took over, it was originally a Adventure League game at a game shop. And I got appointed as the dungeon master, and so for a couple years there, we played every week at the game shop. And then COVID happened, and we had to switch to Roll20 or not do it much at all. And we resumed later on, and meeting was a bit more sporadic, but we did it. And we went from level 10 all the way to level 20. And the game that we started just last year, we didn't get to play through the fall because I was busy coaching girls soccer and got a lot of sore throats. But we're going to play Saturday, which I'm excited about. Is the same world, but 20 years later with a whole new set of characters in a different spot in the world. So previous characters have made cameos already, and they're dealing with the world left over after the campaign. And they're dealing with NPCs that are only in the places they're at because of things done in the previous campaign. And so there's a lot of old tie-ins, but it's new characters, new stuff. There's no old alliances. But it's vaguely familiar, and that's kind of exciting.
Is it the same cast, or is it like 50% of the old cast and like 50% new cast in the new game?
There's a couple of new players. My 9-year-old is playing with us in this one now as well. Fun fact, he just started dungeon mastering for the kid next door who's 8, so I got him going in the right direction. And I have another game going for him and his friends. That one, those sessions only last an hour and a half because they're all 9, and that's as long as it can go before they lose interest or before things start to fall apart and I need Tylenol. Most of the players are returning. There's a couple of new ones. There are no returning characters because we decided to go down to level 5, and I just didn't have a good reason for a level 20 character to be reduced to 5.
Right.
But like I said, some of those old characters have made cameos or have been referenced, and they enjoy that.
Why do you favor tabletop role-playing games, and what do you like about them?
I like the freedom to do whatever. I don't play a lot of modules because, well, I don't run modules because I find them very restrictive personally. I like world building, and I like being able to put things together and do whatever. Modules have their place. They help people get to that comfort level, and that's great. But like as this campaign was getting started, we tried out the characters, and one of my players DM'd a little bit, and I got to be a player for a bit, and he had to majorly improvise because there were these cultists and it was a salt marsh based thing. We just changed the location. But there were these cultists, and they were harassing us. And I blew them up and proceeded to go back to where their ship was. And rather than let them follow us later, I was like, look, we can ride out of here on the tide, but we have half a day before we go out, and wherever these guys came from, they're going to be after us, and I'd rather deal with them now. So we went over and took them out in the harbor. Because I like problem solving. And that saved us an entire big thing out on later on in the module, because the stars of that, or the antagonists of that later part of the module were already dead.
Oh, wait. You were playing, right?
I was a player that time.
Oh, DMs are the worst players.
I acknowledge openly that I am really hard to DM for.
Worst.
Because I am very efficient. Oh, so before I took over the Adventure League game, they were doing Curse of Strahd. And I joined in the latter half of it, and we're in the castle,
Spoilers.
and I played a dwarf.
Everyone who has not played Curse of Strahd, you need to just tune out for a second. Continue, please.
It's not really a spoiler. We're at Strahd's castle, and the game, like the module spells out all of these creepy things, and it's supposed to be a particular setting. But I played a dwarf who was a wagon maker, and I was a cleric, and my 2 main spells that I used all the time were grease and mending.
Oh no!
And I had another one that helped clean things up. You could have followed me through that castle, because anytime we searched a room, I was like, mending, grease the door. He'd be like, you open this door to a creaking sound. I said, no, we don't. Because I grease everything every time we walk in. This thing is shiny, new, fixed magically, and smooth. Not a single door is creaking in the entire creepy castle, because I was there and I fixed it.
Was Strahd nice to you after that?
Strahd lasted 2 rounds against us.
What level were you?
I think we were 9 at that point, maybe 10.
How many players?
We had 5 when we fought Strahd.
5 at level 9.
So
yeah, it's pretty OP, isn't it? I mean, what isn't he like a 15th level CR challenge?
I don't actually know because I didn't look in the book. But the thing about it was that there were things that you were supposed to do in the castle to destroy his resources.
Right.
We did all of those things.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We had 3 clerics in the party, and because I was there, on our week or 2 to walk there, we cast I'm blanking on it. Divine questioning thing. Like we asked our gods every day things about this dungeon. before we got there. So we had all the intel. We went right to everywhere we were supposed to go.
Now, was that because of
Because
you?
we had clerics who could cast the spells to ask the questions.
Was that because of you?
Yes.
Okay,
100%.
so this is what I'm saying. So you cheated. You're like the
No.
fucking game genie. No, man. It's the worst. It's like, all right, we're going to this vampire
It's not
castle.
cheating.
It's
It is
okay, you're
using
right.
the rules the way that
You are.
I was a very
power
efficient
gaming,
dwarf.
cheesy. Cheesy. Oh my god. So this is what would have happened. That bullshit. You know, I would have let you done it had I been the DM. I would have let you done it. However, your gods that you're calling to from fucking Ravenloft. You shouldn't be able to talk to your gods in Ravenloft. I'm going in 2E, maybe in 5th Ed you're allowed to. No, you'd think you're talking to your gods. You're thinking. You'd be talking to something else, though. Walk into that.
I mean, it is technically
creepy
a
cave.
layer of the abyss. Yeah, you're right. If he had been more clever, he would have done that. But he was an Adventure League guy running a module, and the module lets you do it.
Yeah.
I just want to say what you all have just said. It's going to be a tremendous use to my Tuesday night game. Larry, my DM there, is not going to have any idea. Like, I mean, it just so happens we're playing the same module, right? He's not going to know. It's going to be great.
Larry's on this cast, dude. He's on this
I mean,
cast.
we had multiple there were, I think it was 6. We had multiple clerics, a paladin, an artificer, and a rogue, and the rogue had the sun sword.
Oh my god.
And
the rogue
we were prone for vampire hunting.
How did the rogue get the sun sword? Who let that happen?
I don't know. I wasn't there that session.
Oh my. Well, he just made, what?
She used that sun sword all the way to level 20. Like, she still had it at the end of my game.
I'm talking about the rogue.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, he let her have it.
That, and then she let him have it.
Exactly.
Because rogues in 5th edition, I disagree with this, but rogues in 5th edition, they can crit undead. I guess anyone can crit undead, and I don't get it. Sneak attack works on undead. What?
They streamlined a lot of things and made a lot of stuff simpler. Like, when I first got into 5e, and I'm looking at it like, wait a minute, you can do full damage to a skeleton with something other than bashing and bludgeoning? You can do full damage to a zombie with something other than slashing?
Well,
what is going on here?
That's the whole thing. Is like, in 2nd Ed, I'm not trying to say 2nd Ed was good on the rules, but you didn't play certain classes, or you didn't play them very easily in Ravenloft. Like, if you were the cleric, or especially the paladin, you just died. Like, you got killed. And that almost balanced the game out because they're so powerful. Although I don't know if there is a paladin in 2nd Ed. Anyway, you're like this bastion of goodness and hope. All of Ravenloft descends upon you, and takes you down. Yeah. Whereas I think
we did the thing to get Mordenkainen on our side, and he didn't even arrive in time.
I mean, 2 rounds of Strahd. You depowered him. You had the sun sword. There were 5 of you. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and at one point, 3 vampire chicks showed up in the castle, and I said, I cast Turn Undead. And they all failed their saves.
Yeah, but what I don't understand. I just, my mind is blown. Again, 5th edition.
I was not behind the screen on that one, so I can't tell you.
5th Ed is different.
I just know I came into it as this very efficient dwarf.
Yeah, who just rocked and
I had to, and I cast Turn Undead at every opportunity because it was either going to work or it wasn't. And more often than not, it worked. I tried it on Strahd. I could not turn Strahd.
Yeah, that would have been dumb. So that's a certain style of game. It's not a horror game, but it sounds like it's fun at least.
I think he was trying to have it be the horror game, but
fucked up.
I was a no nonsense dwarf.
But was your
And it was like, oh, look, spooky thing. The power of Moradin says, screw you, spooky thing.
right? See, that's not a
Now
horror
it's
game.
not spooky anymore.
That's not a horror game. That like if you can go into it, like you're like the character who like is in the Alien movie. It's like Alien is happening. It's a horror film, and then it like pans over, and it's like you in a Space Marine outfit, and you're like, and like nuke everything, and that's it. And you're like, oh, let's go, get a cheeseburger.
Oh,
It's not a horror
Alien?
movie
No, I
anymore.
totally have the flamer.
It's not a horror
Absolutely
movie
would be a Space Marine with a flamer.
anymore. I mean, it's kind of
No.
cool, but like if you're not scared of it, it's like, you know, it's a style of game. It's like kick down the door and make Strahd your bitch. Okay, you know, Grease this
And
thing.
I'm not big on kicking the door most of the time. Like I will solve everything I can diplomatically. Well, all right. So in the same thing, there's this town, and this guy's daughter is dead,
Barovia.
and he wants her resurrected. And there's some weird monk guy doing experiments up in a abbey up on a hill above this town.
Okay, that's not Barovia, I don't think.
The Burgermeister guy
Yeah,
is down at the bottom. I resolved that issue because the guy up top was trying to make some like zombie girl to go kill Strahd.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, well, your outfit sucks. Do you need a dress made? And he was like, well, probably. And so I used my cleric power to become an expert in anything twice a day. And in the 10 minutes I had for the first go, I made all the measurements and the designs to make a really awesome dress. And we went down to the town where I'd given them like my one resurrection thing to bring the daughter back. And they were all super good, like super happy with us. And so the town made the dress for me. And then we took the dress back up and we dealt with all the stuff in the Abbey with that guy having the dress for his zombie thing, and everybody's happy, and he gave us more ingredients for something else. Like, I basically just side quest solved this whole thing. That's the big thing I like about tabletop RPGs. I can decide to solve a problem by becoming a dressmaker for a little bit. I don't just have to click the options the computer gives me, which are either be really charismatic or burn a hole through everything.
Right.
And I have solved a lot of things that way. In my game, the rogue that had the sun sword had a thing for pastries, and it became a running joke. And like, she had a bag of holding full of fresh pastries all the time. They're just in stasis in there.
Mm.
And they used pastries for diplomacy with an absurd number of NPCs. Like,
sounds like a D&D
we're having
game.
a problem here because you're hangry. Have a donut.
That sounds like a D&D game to me.
But it worked.
It's like
and
everything
it works
is
great.
It's like everything's a Robot Chicken episode, which I'm not trying to diss Robot Chicken. I really like Robot Chicken, but there is an element of okay, it's fun. It's fun. It can be a lot of fun. I just think that
Look, if I was a celestial dragon and someone offered me a jelly donut, I'd call the whole thing off.
how big's the jelly donut, man?
Doesn't matter. It's
You
a
like
jelly
jelly
donut.
donuts?
It's
Jelly
got
donuts
jelly in it.
Jelly donuts are nasty.
If he's a celestial dragon, he's got shape shifting. He can go to a small enough size that donut's bigger than him.
Oh, yeah.
And there are 6 dragons
I
flying.
hate. I'm not even gonna lie to you. There's a point where I got so tired of Dungeons and Dragons. Like it's fun, but it's like eating donuts all the time. And I'm just like, I'll eat a donut. I'll hook it up in the microwave for like 5, 6, 8 seconds. You know what I'm saying? Tear that up. I love it. But I don't want to eat donuts all the time. And I don't understand. I don't understand why people are just, it's like the only thing they play. Supposedly, Hasbro wants to sell D&D. Have you heard this?
I only saw it recently on another post thing, and I don't know any background on it.
Actually,
I don't have any insights here.
Bill Allen, who was in the chat, I don't know if he still is, actually helping me fix the stream. I'm pretty sure he posted on it. I think it's Tencent, which is a Chinese company that that I know because of living in China for a while. Anyway, yeah, I mean, if none of us know anything about it, then we don't know anything about it. But I did think it was kind of interesting to hear that potentially Hasbro was wanting to sell D&D. And
It's not really their bread and butter. I don't think Hasbro's understood the game and understood the market.
I mean, who were the forces behind the D&D movie? Because it seems like that was a really strong move.
I don't know. I know I enjoyed the movie. It was really fun.
Probably people who played it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the movie quite a bit. I think it's good for both people that are into tabletop stuff and complete, what is the other word? People that are not into tabletop stuff. I just don't.
And my wife enjoyed it, and she doesn't do tabletop at all.
Yeah, it was very, very good movie, and I liked how it was able to balance the sort of really fun stuff, but also be serious, like actually bring up emotion and that kind of thing. Which, if you can do that in a D&D game, I think that's a credit.
So, do you want to hear about the most emotional game I ever ran?
Yes.
Okay. So, at one point in our game, one of them was supposed to prevent a regional doomsday device from going off. And rather than stop it, he set it off himself so that no one else could use it in the future. And killed 6 figures worth of people of his own country. And it was a regional cataclysm. It's one of the few few sessions that I had to go get ice cream after. I can't believe you did that way. But a side effect of that, there was a spot called Mimir's Well, which is based on Asgard stuff.
Yeah, it's the snake, yeah.
It's actually the spot where Odin put his eye in the water and to get his knowledge.
Mimir is in Dreadlore is one of the Pact Lords. Is the reason that I say that.
Okay. In Norse stuff, it was a spot and a seer thing. But anyway, maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, in the game, Mimir's Well was this oracle well, and it had a presence on the material, the Feywild, and the Shadowfell. And it had been damaged, and the family of ancient gold dragons that watched over this thing demanded that the party having been the ones to break it, the party had to come fix it. And when they went to the Shadow Well, I did a thing where, let me make sure I'm telling the story right. They had several stages they had to go through to get to the actual spot to fix the well. And it included, they all separated for this. And there was somebody dead that you want to see. The next stage, somebody dead you definitely don't want to see. A memory that was great. A memory that was terrible. A future that you really would like, and a future that you really wouldn't. And I had all the players give me, based on your character, what would they like in these things? And we did a session with, I think 5 or 6 of them were there. And I just spent 5 minutes with each of them doing each stage of, this is where you're at. This is who you're seeing. This is what's going on. How are you responding? And some of it was a bit comedic. There was a dwarf who ended up stuck in an argument with a foe that he had slain. And he was pissed at him. He had Book of Grudge things against this guy. And so he got stuck there arguing. And they had to succeed on a wisdom save to get out of each of these stages. And only 2 of them made it all the way to the end. But we had characters having dead family show up. We had characters cowering from their greatest antagonists. Some of the scenes with the future you hate broke them. Some of the ones with the future you love, that one got a couple of them stuck. It was this is a personal heaven. Why would I ever leave this vision?
Right.
And the ones who made it all the way to the end had to go back into the other people's visions to get them out where they were stuck. but it was emotionally heavy, this the way it was done. And so what you're talking about with being able to switch between the silly and the intense, I can do that. My games do that. It's just a lot more fun to talk about the silly, not the, oh yes, the time that I almost made this one player cry because I managed to tie up their backstory and they actually got involved in the storytelling.
Well, here's
I
a
mean,
question.
not like they're distraught, more of the, like when someone sees a movie that moves them emotionally. And I think it's a little easier to do in a game anyway, because people so often, their characters are an extension of themselves.
Absolutely. 100%.
I saw a meme once that was like, your expectation of dungeon mastering, leading my friends through an adventure slaying monsters. The reality, helping your friends work through their personal trauma while being murder hobos. And I have definitely been around characters where the character was them working through their issues with a degree of separation that allowed them to do so. And I'm kind of sitting back like, maybe I should become a licensed therapist before we do much more of this, because you're working through stuff here.
Oh yeah, I mean,
But
I think tabletop role playing games. I mean, there's a whole thing about it being therapy. But on that note, I am certain that you've run games that have incorporated these elements, the deeper elements, whether they're happy, sad, whatever. But are you able as a player to engage in that, or do you ruin it?
I don't think I've had enough time to figure that one out as a player, because I'm never a player for more than 3 or 4 sessions.
That's the thing, is a lot of times with DMs, consummate DMs that then play every so often, we're so in our heads tactically and that's where the creation is, and the creativity, and then your storytelling. It's sometimes difficult to get out of your own head and to sleuth the game, because I don't know what you were like in school. I can assume you were the fucking worst. You're probably homeschooled though, right?
Oh no, I did public
Or
school the
did
whole
you?
way. My mom refused to homeschool me. She said we'd have killed each other.
Yeah, see? So she was wise.
She was. Very.
But you know what I'm saying? Like the idea of
No, I was the smart kid who was difficult to keep on topic and difficult to keep engaged, because
well, you figured it out.
for example, in 8th grade, we were going over US history. Again, there wasn't a single new thing from 5th grade when we'd already done it.
Mhm.
And I was apparently the only one in the room who remembered any of that. And the teacher finally just gave me his college textbook on Andrew Jackson, gave me some assignments from when he was in college, and put me in the back. And I learned to hate Andrew Jackson because he was a dick. But anyway.
But yeah, go on.
Didn't you go to high school in California?
I did. I went to Valencia High School in Valencia, California.
Valencia. Yeah, I'm in California right now. Not going to
I
high
know.
school,
I
though.
keep asking you why you're there, and you keep blowing me off.
Yeah. Well, that's how I feel. that's how I feel about Los Angeles. I feel like I'm getting blown off. I'm here doing acting, and or pursuing acting, I should say, and a lot of podcasting. There's this. There's the Monday night game that we're doing, which is it was called Dreadlore. Yeah, it was called Dreadlore Theater of the Mind, but I have changed it since to Dreadlore Live Play. Because apparently live play is something people understand, whereas Theater of the Mind, they're like, what the hell? What the hell? And then Thursdays is this, and pretty much on the weekdays I do a chess podcast where I lose to 12 and 14-year-olds, which is spectacular. That's what I'm doing out here. So Bill Allen says, "So Curse of Strahd has some cool things, but definitely lost less of the original horror flavor." Yeah. He also says, "I was like, or it was like taking an R-rated movie and re-editing it to PG-13 movie." Yeah. That's Bill. I don't know. I can't remember because day and night bleed into one. If you guys are not following Bill Allen on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, you should definitely do it. He's got a lot of good content. Anyway, I'm not sure if it was on his channel or not, but they were talking about Curse of Strahd and kind of what it's become, and there's this whole conversation about Fifth Edition and how it just kind of has kids gloves, which there is an argument for, but I think that it actually diminishes the game. I think it's better to have a game where uh, you can go to the extremes, and then it's up to that group and Huffaker, like you were saying, the trust of the group and the GM knowing the group to figure out where the line is. I mean, what do you think?
So 5e dumbed a lot of things down. It made the game a lot easier to run. Like, I as a DM have to prep almost nothing because it's just easy to do. And they provided like little printed out cards for different things. If you bought, like, they did a lot of stuff that basically was Hasbro wanting to make money off of it. Good for them.
Right.
They're a company. That's what they do.
Right.
So 5e did two main major shifts from 3.5. One was they codified allowing the DM to do open storytelling stuff, change alignments of creatures, make goblins good or evil depending on how their world went. Like, they took away all of the standing trope stuff and made it a lot more open and made it so that it's any non-human that's dark isn't automatically evil. But you could have done that anyway in 3.5. No, I mean like orcs.
Oh, okay.
And drow and anybody with dark pigmentation who wasn't a major human thing. Like, in the old editions, you can look at it and basically go, they look light colored, they're probably good guys. Those ones look dark colored or green, they're probably bad guys.
It's interesting because in outside of the Greyhawk, well, I really shouldn't. In the old days, it wasn't really Greyhawk, but outside of the D&D mythos, if you go to like Warhammer, dark elves who are evil, or they're not necessarily evil, they're just incredibly ambitious, basically evil. They're extremely light-skinned. They're like almost
Which
gothic.
makes sense if they're elves from a dark place, because you wouldn't have any skin pigment if you're living somewhere dark.
Right.
But drow were purple.
Yeah, drow are cool as shit. Yeah. Yeah.
And they were purple. And they were evil. Whereas other elves were not purple. And were not necessarily evil.
They're made evil though. Because and that's something that go on.
Regardless of whether they were made evil because they had a goddess on top of them who absolutely loved driving them all to Byzantine politics and murder, which is the case, like, sure, you could kidnap a drow baby, raise it somewhere else, and they would be fine. A normal person. The effect on the other end was they were evil, regardless of how they got there. And same with orcs, same with gnolls, same with, well, gnolls are still evil because now monsters. Instead of being...
monsters.
Well, in 5e, they are specifically being pulled out of the abyss by Yeagaloth or whatever to go on rampages.
Right.
They simplified them too. But the bonus of simplifying things is that it made it more accessible for people to just walk in. It is way easier for me to make a character sheet for a kid to play than it takes less than half the time to make a 5e sheet than it did a 3.5.
Sure. I believe that.
So for teaching people to play for the first time, which is kind of what they're hoping to do with 5e, is get a lot more customers. If you're teaching them new for the first time, 5e is a much easier way to do that. If they want something infinitely customizable to build the character of their dreams, they absolutely want to go back to 3.5. You can puzzle out anything you want.
Yeah, and that's the thing too is, I'd like your opinion on this because we've talked about it a few times, and actually, Drizzle and Hulker too. So there's this element with tabletop role playing games, right? Because a lot of people they hear TTRPG and they're like, "Oh, right, D&D," and I get it. I mean, I made my own system, and made a book out of it, so I have a big old chip on my shoulder about this. But so there's character creation.
You? Chips on your shoulder?
Yes.
Really?
So there's I'm a big old bitch. So, and a dick at the same time, because I don't care. Character creation. So you can have a very easy, streamlined character creation. You could have a more granular character creation. I personally have my opinions on this, as in that is an element of a system. It could be a barrier to entry. And then there's the actual playing of the system. Now, I will posit this. Regardless of how streamlined the character creation process is in D&D, in 5th ed, it's very streamlined. I would agree. The game itself is not a simple game, as opposed to what people think. And I want to know your guys' opinions. Do you prefer streamlined character creation? Ease of play? Does it matter? Do you like a more granular one of those? Go.
All right, so for me, it depends on who I'm playing with. If I have people who are familiar with the system and are familiar with role-playing games in general, then I'm going to let them make as complicated a character as they want, as long as they can run their own mechanics and I don't have to think about it. With pushing through playing games while having kids around or playing with kids, when playing with kids, having it be as streamlined as possible is really helpful. Like with the 9-year-olds, I took their character sheets and whatever their highest attack stat or spell stat was, I made it the same for all of them. Like if it was wisdom, if it was intelligence, doesn't matter. The one that they're casting their spells on is the same one, so that since I'm having to do a lot more of the mental load of keeping this game running with 9-year-olds, if they all have the same number, I'm not constantly going, okay, well, what's your modifier? Well, what's your modifier? Well, what's your modifier? If they all have just to throw out there, +6 to their spells, then I know, die roll, add 6, did you make it, did you not?
Right.
Or even their attack rolls. If it's all this, if they have the max stat for their whatever their attack roll is, that makes my life easier with them, and it makes the game possible with them at all. And if I'm doing this with people who are brand new to it, and if I have to hold their hand through it, I want as few complications as possible. Because in that instance, tabletop games are effectively a game of pretend. Like, that's what they are. That's what we're doing. We are adults still playing pretend.
Right.
We just happen to have put a mechanical system on it, whether that is World of Darkness with D10s, whether that's a D20 system, whatever the heck you're doing, you are playing a game of pretend in a collective storytelling game, and the mechanics are just there to resolve conflicts. So that if I'm like, Hulker, I punch your character, and he's like, nuh-uh, I block. And I'm like, no, I totally hit you in the face. And he's like, no, I countered and twisted your arm. We have dice rolls to resolve that. I mean, he's going to give me a mean face and make me back down either way. But we have dice rolls to resolve that. The one time in D&D that I decided to murder another party member, there were mechanics for that. He cheated, but he still ended up dead eventually. Yeah, that was one of the times I actually got to play a character for a long time. And when I do get to play a character, I tend to pick a couple of elements and run with it. That particular character despised anybody over 4 feet tall and was particularly paranoid.
You're a DM
So-
who's playing. I understand. You don't understand. Well, I know you don't. I know you understand, but like that is the story of literally all of the GMs that I know who play. Every time, it's always, well, I set these rules forth, and then the game exploded, or I solved it, and it's not my fault because I said it was this way. And every single time.
I did not pull the "this is what my character would do, therefore" thing. The other character literally beat my character unconscious for a stupid reason.
Why?
And I put a dirty sock in his bag of holding
Why'd you do that?
for fun.
All
Because
right.
I do little silly pranks sometimes.
But why did his character beat? Okay, so we know why your character
Because
did
the
it.
player had anger issues and chose to take it out in the game.
So it was a meta thing.
It was a meta thing on that part. And in the character, I slowly took the time to study the other character's motions and other things, because as a character, if somebody else is so unstable that they're going to nearly kill me over a prank, that person cannot be trusted. You can't just ditch them and leave. They might show up later and attack you unknown. So this is a problem that has to be solved.
Right, but you went meta too, because you're dealing in game with a person out of game, because you're not getting rid of the person out of game. Or did you? Did they quit the game?
The dungeon master dealt with them later.
I see.
But
I mean, I appreciate what you did. At the same time, it's you know, it's the same thing, just a higher brow attempt.
Anyway.
Okay,
no, there was another time I got to
go
play a wizard, and I had never just gotten to play a straight caster. This was in 3.5, and so I just kind of looked at it and went, well, if I'm going to specialize this guy, what is the weakest type of caster I can think of?
Uh-oh.
And so I made a specialized enchanter and proceeded to wipe out entire dungeons by just putting everybody inside to sleep.
The evidence is mounting, Huffaker. It's mounting.
Okay, fine.
So, did you answer the question? Which I guess it just depends on what kind of player group you're with.
Right, that was the answer to the question. I do a lot to vary the game based on who I'm playing it with. Because it's not just I am the dungeon master and therefore you play my game my way.
Right.
That's stupid.
Right.
You're playing a game with other people. It is a collective storytelling game. If you're going to bother playing with people, you need to make a game that the majority of them are going to enjoy the majority of the time. And granted, I have to maintain my own interests, so I'm going to do certain things so that the game is interesting enough to me.
While you're playing.
But like I said at the beginning, if I'm planning ahead, I will say, here are 3 or 4 possible quest hooks that I find interesting. Among you guys, which of these do you think will be the most interesting to you?
Now, is this you as a player or a GM or both?
This is me as a dungeon master.
Okay.
I have not had a DM actually come to me and say, well, what do you think would be interesting? No one's done that for me. But I do that for them and make it so that our social contract is fulfilled in that I'm doing something that is interesting to me and worth the sacrifice of time and thought energy to make it happen. And they're also having a good time and making it go well. And believe it or not, I am actually sensitive enough to other people's emotional state that if someone is having a particularly horrible gaming session, I pick up on it and it starts to derail my dungeon mastering. Because now I'm concerned, what's going on with this person? It's overriding the energy of the story, and do I need to do something in-game to help them? Is there something out of game going on to help them?
Yeah.
I do see earlier when you were talking about therapy and how you were helping, how you should be kind of licensed therapist in helping with the D&D.
There's an element of that when it. Let's put a pin in it really quick. I want to get your guys' answers. So Hulker, you and Drizzle, do you remember the question?
Streamline or not?
Yeah.
So earlier when the stream started, I said I started playing D&D second edition in the 7th grade for a bit, and the reason it was only for a bit is because the people running the game would try to explain to me, 7th grade me, THACO.
Oh yeah.
And I
THACO sucks.
thought, what is this? and I'll never forget when later on when some other friends of mine introduced D&D 3 or 3.2 or something like that, and they said, "Oh, THACO's gone." I thought, yeah, it made no sense to me. So I'd have to say there's probably only a certain amount of complexity that I could really handle unless I actually sit down and read it and can put it into a spreadsheet that will actually calculate all the values for me.
Oh, you motherfucker! You love spreadsheets. This guy is a wizard at spreadsheets. Like a level.
Spreadsheets are an amazing tool if you know how to not put everything as a date.
Continue, Hulker. Sorry.
So if I could put it into a spreadsheet and calculate it and make it work for me and keep track of it, then I could probably handle some really complicated games.
This
right?
dude, he'll roll out with like we were doing a 5th ed game, Planescape. Have you ever run Planescape, Huffaker, or is it pretty much just your world that you run?
I have used elements from other things, but lately, anytime I do something big, they come out with a book about it right after. Like I
Right.
had a huge thing with dragons, and then they came out with fizzbands, and then I did a huge thing with giants, and then they came out with the giants book.
You
So
know why
I don't
that
know what's
is?
going on,
You know why that is?
but whatever I do,
Your
they come out
phone,
with a book about it
your
6 months
phone,
later.
Your phone is listening to you, and they're listening and they're taking it.
It's probably everybody else's D&D Beyond app sucking it in.
Drizzle, how about you?
To me, I don't think it matters whether the character creation, like the mechanics of the character creation, is streamlined or not, because to me, the character's in my head. So I create the character and flesh them out that way before I even tried to do any sort of mechanics. So like either way, if it's like a heavy mechanics built character or light, like I see the character as he is anyway. If that makes sense. Like it's I know how he's gonna react and that sort of stuff. He's in my head he's more story driven and built, so the mechanic side, whether it's light or heavy, doesn't matter as much to me.
Right.
And that's how RPGs are supposed to be anyway. This, like I said, it's a game of pretend. We just happen to put mechanics on it so we can pretend together and have it function.
And
go on.
Like most of my characters start out as an archetype. So it's I take something from somewhere, take it and start twisting it and making it and putting it into how I want to use it. And then they grow and develop from the base.
All right, let's because I want to get back to I want to talk about at least 2 more things. One, Drizzle, you had a point, you had a question that you were talking about. It had to do with therapy, and then I also wanted to talk a little about Huffaker with your campaign, your world, because you have at least one. I'm assuming more than one, like an entire world. But before we do that, let's take like a 5-minute break and use the bathroom and get some water and stuff like that, and then we can finish up. Is that cool?
That's cool.
All right. I'm going to attempt to play some music. We'll see what happens with it. So yeah, 5 minutes and be right back.
do on a freight train or everyday fight. Make a midnight kiss with fantasy too hard. Take a twist on every day, an emotional fright. No space, plant flight. We're leaving Earth tonight. If they won't let you run, but can't let go. As high as you are, pretending more. Live to make a living. The computer knows you. The computer knows you loud. Everyone abused, one way or another. Understanding blind spot, or just because the other. Time to run. No one is justified. No excuse for this. Here we are. You're the star. And it's time, even though, yes, but it's a crime. You're the star. And it's time, even though, yes, but it's a crime. It's over. Get carried away as far as the eye can see. Inescapable and capable for everything to me. Don't know what to say, but they come for us anyway. Cancelled, checked, ghosting, regret, don't give nothing, and anything goes. The ground was so deep, we couldn't stand, couldn't try to be. Get carried away
Has it gotten too dark on this end? Or are we still good?
No, you look fine.
Okay. The sun went down over the course of this conversation.
Oh, sun's been down here for a while, so
Yeah, you're over there in the east.
yep. At least it was in the 50s today. I got to go outside without a coat on.
That's nice.
It's supposed to be 32 tonight, so that's a different story. But
Professionally, I work in construction stuff, and I'm outside all the time, and it makes a big difference what the soil types are. Because out by you, it's all clay, and when we got those big rainstorms, you wouldn't work for 3 days because I couldn't drive on the job site.
oh,
But out here, it's volcanic basalt, and that stuff actually drains, so you can work in the rain. People don't just go home. So in 5 years of Oregon, I've lost less days to weather than I would in 1 in Kentucky. And I was there for 12, so I have enough years to be able to survey sample that effectively.
That's how we know each other. Way back when.
The Soils Lab at Core.
Where?
Core Property Science. Core!
Oh, there it is. Oh, I see. All right, right. Core! That's what it was called. You know, it's not called that anymore.
No, it's S&ME.
I know. I don't understand why. I mean, I do understand because I've made up as an arbiter / GM, DM, whatever. I've made up NPC names that look really good on paper. And then you say them out loud the first time when you introduce them. And you're like, oh, yes, anal bum cover. Wait, fuck! Damn it!
So I learned the hard way. Like, I gave all of my dragons different ethnicities by type, like just for styling their names.
Wait, shit.
So, like, for a bit there, the gold dragons all had Spanish names. The red dragons had French names. But when I tried to do Welsh names for the silver dragons, I got into it and went, this was a mistake.
Wait, you gave all the red you made the red
my big bad worm, ancient red dragon, was named Francois.
Did you have a Pierre? I can.
No, but I had a Maria.
I cannot. Well, Maria is fine. Jean-Paul. You see Jean-Paul as he rounds the castle wall. Smoking. Hello, I am the Red Dragon Jean-Paul.
I don't even know how you pronounce half the Welsh.
I don't think anyone does.
I mean, have you seen how it's spelled?
No.
They clearly were using runes to spell things before, and when they were forced to give up what they wanted and had to use the anglicized alphabet, they just went crazy with it as a form of vengeance.
That's right. That's right. It's like, yeah, I mean...
Passive aggressive, take that, rather than blowing up houses like the Irish.
Yeah. You know, I approve of everything.
Is that a bridge too far, Will?
No, I approve of the... Was that another joke? Was that a hidden joke there? Fine, I'm fine with it. I enjoy it. I think it's hilarious. You made your red dragons French. First, Drizzle, what was your question?
It was not a question.
Oh.
It was just commenting on how the way he talked about it. I could see how he would use his D&D to help his players through as a therapist. I was agreeing to what he had said earlier.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because he was like it was a lot like therapy. I mean, I know, you know, we went through the whole situation that I went through with Melolel and everything.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that we ran a game. It's on YouTube. You know, I tried watching it. The early sessions are pretty rough, just because of the tech.
Watching yourself on stuff is hard.
Was that episode on NoOL? I mean, was that
I'm pretty
episode
sure.
on?
I'm pretty
I
sure
don't
all
think
of
it
them were.
was. I thought it was right before we started.
No, man, I'm pretty sure it was. So we ran this. It's called Richmond Fay. Huffaker, did you ever meet Eric? Eric Seaman? I don't think so. I think it was
I don't
prior.
know.
I think it was us hanging out
Well,
doing
his
LARPs.
last
It was-
So
name's
the
Seaman.
trouble with
So if you met him,
the
you
trouble
know.
with whether or not I know people from the Lexington gaming scene is that when I hit the scene, I hit it so big and with so much presence that people forgot that I wasn't always there.
right. Panay
Like,
is in like
They
every
kind
game.
of they just kind of imposed my presence on other things like I had always been.
Mm.
Like I noticed with the LARP in particular, the perception of my presence was far bigger than I actually am as a human.
I mean, I understand that very well. At least you're like 7 feet tall.
Oh, obviously, even though I'm only 6'1.5".
6'1.5". I mean, I'm 5'9", dude. That's like half a foot taller than me.
I have a very big personality. I fill rooms.
Well, what I'm actually saying is in that game, as I coined it, the shit LARP, because I'm hilarious. We played characters.
Very clever.
It was clever. We played characters. Were you a Carthian? Did you play Carthian?
Oh, are you talking about Josh's LARP?
Well, he had a couple different ones.
Are you talking about the one that we did at Liz's house?
I believe if it was the house that had lots of children in it, or
They're
children's toys. I
not
should
usually.
say.
They were toys, yes.
Yeah, it was creepy.
Yes, I started as an Invictus because that was when the LARP broke and
Right.
spilled over, and Josh did the continuance of it.
I see. Right.
So I started as an Invictus. I had a lot of Carthian allies.
Yeah, I remember that. So I played a character in that game, and he somehow became like the arc evil, like
At gold.
the bad guy. And we had a wiki because for some reason all LARPs had wikis at that time, and someone had posted in it. They had said, I met Will or Bill on here in person, because that's the thing in a game like a tabletop game. There's a lot of out of game, like that.
Yeah.
That like I'm talking to Drizzle, and I know that Drizzle's playing his character from Into Space. Like Skip Trace, I know he's playing him. And so I know when he's playing a character and when he's not. But in a LARP, that's not the case, because you're essentially
No, you have to very specifically look. I'm not in character right now, and then no one
Right.
treats it like out of character anyway.
right. And then you have that metagame bullshit where people are trying to do out of game shit in game and vice versa. Anyway, this person they met me. They posted on the wiki. They said, "I met Bill out of game. He's a really nice guy." And I totally thought that he was going to be this absolute horrible person who's like, made of evil and 12 feet tall and awful. And I was like, first of all, I appreciate someone actually realizing that I am not the character. And two, my guy wasn't even that bad. Like,
No, he wasn't.
He didn't do
He did a
anything.
little bit behind the scenes.
He
But
did
people
nothing.
he was affiliated with did a lot.
Yes.
And
He did
people
nothing.
he trained.
He did nothing.
Dakota did a ton of stuff, and you got blamed for it because
Yes.
you were behind Dakota.
Right. And Fancher. And Fancher. It was a good game, man. Logan
And
was
then,
in there.
and
Oh
then
my
we were
god.
affiliated, and
Logan
I was just
Nance.
trying. Oh,
Speaking of, dude,
Yeah.
I did the audio. Oh, you know that because you listened to the audiobook of
yeah, I
Saturday
got
Shepherd.
to be one of the reviewers on it.
Saturday Shepherd in the World Beyond. I'm not sure if Panayan makes an entrance. I asked Logan about it though, because there was a character or two that I was like, is that Panayan? and I can't remember what he said, but I'm pretty sure your character's gonna appear in the second one. Not 100%. Logan can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well,
maybe
and
we can
even if
bully
he
him into it.
does, it's going to be Logan's version of Panaean.
Right.
And like it was years after the game was over before Josh understood what my version of what Panaean was and what he was trying to be
Well, he
was.
He was like a super elder that had lost blood potency, right?
No!
Or he
He
wasn't.
was just a neonate that everybody above him ditched, and he was left trying to hold all the pieces together.
Did Will Stull, did his character create you?
Stopper found me.
Stopper. Right. Because
I
Stull was
was
playing a
I was
Nosferatu.
Stopper's squire.
Stopper was playing a Nosferatu. Oh, no. Will Stoll's character
No,
was...
he was something else, but he adopted me, and I was
Yeah.
his apprentice, squire,
Right.
whatever.
And then in typical Stopper fashion, he fucking left the game.
Yeah, and when the game switched over and Josh was in charge, most of the Invictus bailed.
Yeah.
And
Well, that was an explosion. That was an out-of-game explosion. Interesting.
that was an out-of-game explosion. But I kept going, and I ended up being the de facto prince.
Yeah, for a while.
Because
For a while.
and it wasn't ever official. It was just raw force of personality.
Yeah.
And I actually kept getting annoyed at everybody else because, sure, we could scheme and plot, but we had this outside thing that was their explanation for why everything had exploded, and nobody was doing anything about it but me.
Right.
And it just pissed me off because I was trying to solve the problem. Well, can you believe that?
See, that's the problem was not a story thing. The problem was who was running the game. Because they fucking suck at storytellers.
I love Josh. Josh, I adore him.
I don't have anything against Josh. I have nothing against him.
Josh was really easy to push around as a storyteller at that time of his life. I don't know how he runs games now, if he runs games now. But basically at that point, if anyone came to him and said, wouldn't it be cool if, you could talk him into it. Didn't matter how little sense it made, especially if it was Lance. Lance Granger could talk him into anything.
Lance is a good storyteller. I never really knew him, but I was told that some of the games he ran were really, really good. The thing is, that group, you came into late, and truth, me too. I came into that group like a year before you, and it was a very there was a cliquish nature to it. So, and that especially in LARPs, I think LARPs are more prone to it because it's difficult, like we said, to know to be able to separate the person from their character. And then you get people that are doing ST storytelling stuff. They kind of get in that role. They don't get out of it. You got people that are always playing the prince, the highest, the ruler role in the game. And they always float to the top because unlike a tabletop game, just because I have a charisma of 20 in D&D terms in a LARP, it doesn't matter if I've got 5 or 10 dots. If I don't have a charisma, nobody's going to follow me. And that's the thing.
Yeah, I wasn't built as a charisma character as Panaean. I was just trying to figure out the system at all. It was my first World of Darkness character.
Right. Right.
But I'm me, and I'm clever, and I can be charismatic, and despite my large size, I'm mostly mental stats.
But you see, that's the thing. That's the thing that comes down in the LARPs. You got about 80% of people. This is my corollary. There ain't no proof to this. 80% of the people, they are there. See, are you ready for this tie-in? They are there for a kind of therapy.
They're playing themselves with a degree of separation.
Yeah. Drizzle and Hulker. You wallflowers, you. Please interject and shut me up.
No.
Well, you're just talking, and I'm not. There's no reason to interject it.
There's
nothing
always
I
a
have
reason to
say
interrupt
about it.
me.
All right, shut up, Will. So, the On the therapy thing and the degrees of separation, one of the great things about fiction as a whole is that it takes you to other worlds, but you're still dealing with people and human concepts. So from Lord of the Rings, from other things, like you see these great forces, you see how people are reacting, the psychology of people, and you can be like, oh, that's great, and you can learn from it without worrying about your own context and bias and if something's hitting the nail on the head, because there's a degree of separation. It's happening outside of the world. You get to understand the concept and principle by itself without it being about you and your parents, you and your friends, you and your economics, the world you live in. Dystopia comes a little closer than that because it is our world, but something has gone ridiculously wrong in the extreme, and now people are reacting to that.
Dystopia.
One of the reasons I prefer Marvel over DC is that while DC is caricatures and demigods, Marvel is regular people get powers, here's what they do. On the whole.
I got a clarification here. Is dystopia a setting, a genre, a system? What is it?
Okay, dystopia as a genre of like Maze Runner, Hunger Games,
I see.
1984, the near future sci-fi things are crazy. Blade Runner, those dystopias.
I dig.
It also is an existing game, and I haven't played it, but I've heard good things. But anyway, you get to see that degree of separation. When you are participating in an RPG, you are the character having that degree of separation. So it allows you to put your have a character who has things similar to you, and what they're going through isn't you. They're going through something, and it isn't you. So you are able to experience, work through, effectively practice the responses to those events, to those potential traumas, and sort it out as a concept and make a template. It's like practicing soccer before an actual soccer game. It is a drill for how you emotionally respond to what's going on. The books and movies and existing media are like watching the play, watching someone else's game video. Now in the RPG, it's a practice. You are role-playing through these scenarios. And like, I know I've been in work trainings where like, let's role-play a situation. And I'm like, well, you have no dice, so this is going to suck. But it's the same concept. It is, let's practice something in a contained environment that has no real-world impact, or shouldn't.
Or it could also be catharsis, too, I think.
Yes. It can.
A situation that has happened, and it can help you as this is someone who it can help you. This is a situation that you've experienced and you didn't know how to deal with, and you're dealing with it with this character, and then you can put it back onto your own experiences.
Yes, very much so.
It's It's also a really good opportunity to maximize the key stats on your character sheet, and then to roll in and make the game entirely about you, and to suck the life out of everyone else's experience who's trying to work through all of this stuff. And it allows you to see
that's why the
friends who are
DM is
trying
there,
to
make sure the group therapy isn't all about you.
Yeah, to who are trying to do all of this noble stuff, and it allows you to deny them that.
And then Murad stabs them.
But either way, you're working through something. The problem that Will and I experienced a lot with the LARP is that when you're embodying the character and you made yourself, the degree of separation that you get at the table, like he talked about with you before, like the sheets on the table, that is the person. In a LARP, you might have your character sheet in your back pocket, but you are the person, you are the figure. And so people would be scared of Will. People would be scared of me because we're doing things to them. And they would think that we were these horrible beings because, yes, my character unscrewed the back of Dakota's head, put a buzzer inside it, and put his head back on as a punishment, which I thought at the time was just silly and creative, and he role-played it. He went buzz, 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 buzz the rest of the session.
I'll
I
never
would never
forget.
do that to a real person. Ever.
I'll never forget. I was this was at a LARP ran by Josh, which I had a lot of fun at. By the way, I played a Nosferatu who would randomly eat things,
The bottle caps?
and bottle caps and cigarettes, and I brought candy cigarettes, and I would like stick it in my mouth, and I would just slowly eat it, right, and look at them. I always liked Nosferatus.
Yeah, that game was good. That was at the POT building on UK's campus. I was playing it wasn't a Lancea Sanctum. It was it was the Ordo Dracul people. You know, that's the thing. Requiem, so World of Darkness Requiem. The rules are fine, but man, the lore is just not as good as Masquerade. I have yet to play the new version of Masquerade. From what I understand, it's a lot more streamlined and a lot better. And they kind of went back to, the original stuff.
So they made a new system, but brought back old lore.
From what I understand, yeah. And I think it's like 5th edition.
That's a good way to take the advantages of both. I never played the old one.
It's a lot better.
But
it's a lot more.
But I heard a lot of the lore was a lot more intense, and that sounded fun.
Well, it's a horror game, and if you read the Requiem book, it's almost like, I mean, it's almost trying to be kind of like D&D.
They turned it into an adventure game. Yeah,
and with Masquerade, it is very clear from the introduction. This is a horror game. It literally says you have to really understand the world to play this game. The rules are fucking shit. They're terrible. They make no sense, and people that run those rules for some reason are some of the most inflexible storytellers I have ever been in a game with. Let me give you an example. I've made this example before. So let's say you have a few stats. Let's say that the stats are the D&D stats. So attributes, okay? If someone wants to run and jump, what's the stat you would make them roll?
Athletics. Strength.
Right. What is the attribute? Right. So strength.
Strength.
Okay. What about if they're going to pull an underworld and they're on like the 3rd floor of a building and they jump off and they're going to land, and let's say they have, in Requiem would have been vigor. Whole bunch of vigor. What stat would you have made them roll?
Jumping off a building?
Yeah, jumping off a 3rd story of a building and landing like in the beginning of the
Oh, to land where they generally wanted, probably strength, and then I'd have them do a dex save on landing to see if they could roll it off.
Right. So, now if you had a whole lot of potence, which is vigor in Masquerade, so basically what that stat does is one of the disciplines. The number of dots you have give you automatic successes. So remember that, like, having one success means you do it. Okay? That means you do it.
So you could jump off all kinds of things.
You got one success. Ergo, you do it. The way that the dice worked in Old World was what dictated a success, that number, was up to the ST. So the ST could say, roll your D10s, how many ever you have based on your pool. The difficulty for a success is 3. It's very, very easy to get that, right? Well, the difficulty is an 8, which is really hard to get that. So that was the sliding scale. It was up to the ST to decide what was a success. Getting one success was a big deal. And then, if you rolled ones, you lost successes, and there were other mitigating factors. Having potence, having vigor, was a big deal. Enter my character.
Dun, dun,
I
dun.
am jumping off of a building. Now I'm playing a La Sombra. A La Sombra is essentially a maquette in Requiem. Basically, it's a shadow wizard, but think of a maquette. You basically have the right idea. But one of their disciplines is potence. It's vigor. And so I'm like, cool. How high up am I? Oh, you're about 30 feet. I'm like, 30 feet. Well, an actual human could jump off that. They'd hurt themselves likely, but maybe even die. But I'm a fucking vampire. And I've got potence too, which is quite a bit. Okay, boom. All right. What happens? Roll dexterity. And I'm like, wait, what? Roll dex to just fall? Yeah, that's what it is in the book. You got to roll dex. All right, so I roll dex. I get 0 successes because I have no dex. Well, what about my potence? Oh, that doesn't matter because it's strength based. So my character literally goes all the way down. His legs bend in half, explode. Okay, like he's this mangled mess on the ground, and mechanically, I have 1 hit point before my elder fucking vampire turns into ash. This is game 2 or 3, okay?
You've told me this story. It's been years, but yeah.
To this day,
Wow.
it is a thing. It is a thing. And I'm real salty about it. What's up, Ken? It's about time. Hey, Huffaker.
Hello, person number 5.
Huffaker, this is Ken Howl, the usual co-host. Ken, who are you?
Hello?
Oh, I'm a hard-boiled detective.
No, you're
I
not.
come from the mean streets of Detroit in 1982.
You are so muffled.
Oh
Very
no,
quiet.
maybe I've got my. I don't have the equipment that I typically have.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, we hear your voice
But-
like you do. We're like inside your head.
I feel like I'm in my head.
Hey.
Is that one
Oh
better?
yeah, it's way better.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's way better.
Okay. Good. Well, I'm a filmmaker and a geeky gamer podcaster, and I play as Nord Zetterberg, and I play as a couple other games in the Dreadlore world with William, and I tell him how to act, and because he's clearly never had any training for manners or anything like that. So
Yeah, when I do
He's
these
a little feral.
when we do these podcasts, seriously, there's about anywhere from 2 to 5 people who regularly message me and they say, be nice, shut up, be nice. Like constant. Ken is one of these people. I get these little texts and he's like, shut up. He doesn't say shut up. He says it in a very nice way. Be nice.
I've only told
Because
you to shut up once this conversation.
give you a little look. No, I want to hear what you're going to say because I'm in it for the shock value.
So we were about to ask Huffaker about the world
building.
that he's created. Now, how many actual like universes do you have going on?
Actively right now?
Yeah,
2.
2. Well, tell us a little bit about them. I say a
Oh,
little
boy.
because
Okay.
they are so big.
Well, one of them isn't a whole lot because it's a game for 9-year-olds, and I am very big on scaling what I'm doing for them. So they are on a specific island so far. It is contained, and I will not create more of that world until they decide they are interested in anything beyond the island. Because I only have so much mental energy. It may be more than some, but it is not infinite. So I am not going to flesh out entire things. The world of Pearl, which is the one that the big 4-year game was in and the new game is in. When I world create, I kind of start from the big globe view, draw a vague shape of what continents there are, make a vague list of here's who's where and a little bit of minor history on it. And then I start zooming in towards where the players are at. And the more I'm zoomed in, the more fleshed out things will become. And I will do long histories. On Pearl, the giants used to control a supercontinent. Big giant empire. The Ordning was king. And they all worshipped Anim and all that stuff. At some point, about 3,000 years before the game started, there was a cataclysmic explosion that blew up the middle of the continent, formed 2 other continents, made what's called the Sunder Sea in the middle, and left a giant maelstrom spinning in it full of magical mayhem that threw eldritch storms off like hurricanes to the sides periodically. And the giants still have some feudal, they're not well organized, but they still controlled the southern continent at game start. And they had been hunted into tiny pockets by regular humanoids in the top part. About 1,500 years later, dragons became a big deal, and there was a large-scale war across the continent between chromatic and metallic dragons. And then in the region that the game took place to start, that war... the end of it took particular form. And I wrote out an overall history, a long distance one. And it was a few pages long, but like, they were in a particular region called Was Morgan. It used to be ruled by the Morgan family. And the Morgan family were a big part of the last battle that stopped the chromatic dragons from running things. And it had been a few hundred years since they had lost power because the final Morgan in charge was an idiot and overstretched. And there's a hobgoblin fortress that had never been breached, and he tried to take it and he failed, and his allies had been alienated enough that when the hobgoblins came to get him afterwards, backed by black dragons, no one came to help.
So he got hobgoblin.
And the game actually got started as a one-shot. We had left Curse of Strahd, and they went to a town that was overseen by a copper dragon who ended up becoming my most important recurring NPC. And he had locked himself in a time trap, and they had to get him out of it. That one-shot became a two-shot. The town was full of retired adventurers who went there because it was safe. And no one chose to mess with it because if you have a bunch of old wizards kicking it around playing chess and you come knock over their chessboard and they start throwing meteors at you, that's not a good thing.
Right.
So that place had relative peace, relative wealth, and that became their base of operations for a long time. But I had drawn out a local map. I had a vague regional map and even more vague continent map that just poked out main places. And I don't flesh I keep things vague and I don't flesh them out until the players choose to interact with them. I have known way too many people to make full-on campaign books for themselves and only get to use 10%.
Yeah.
That is a lot of work. That's a lot of work for nothing. And then you end up disappointed because you had this expectation they're going to use all this stuff, and they don't.
Right.
And they made a left.
Well, that's one reason why in the games that I run, for example, the one for Into Space, there's a rather large world. I wrote it. It was a book, but the idea is these are modules that the players can explore however they wish, and because they're modules that will be published, those stories will be told. You see,
I get that, but I'm not publishing anything.
But you could.
So, not yet.
But you could.
And so I'm not doing anything with that. I just write this stuff out because it interests me. I did at one point. Remember I said the guy blew up his own country?
Yeah.
That whole country section got created because this guy wanted to have the Asgardian pantheon for his cleric. And so, because that was his interest, I was originally just using like Halo, Halor and Cord and like the Greyhawk gods. And he wanted to use the Asgard, and someone else wanted to use a different set. And so I changed the world so that the way the gods work is on whatever given planet, and there are many planets that you can jump between, the gods are an entity, but their power on that world is entirely based on the amount of worship they have on that world. So if nobody is worshiping Ra on Pearl, Ra can't do squat on Pearl. If a bunch of people are worshiping Odin, Odin has power and influence around those worshipers. Like if there's another continent where they're all about Zeus, Odin's going to have a lot less potency. His clerics are still going to be able to function as clerics because I'm not going to hobble a PC over something stupid like that. But the god himself isn't going to come wandering in and start throwing people around.
So, real quick question, because it was something you hit on earlier. So you're okay if when a character, because I want to go back, when a character makes a left, does that have a consequence when you're world building and stuff like that? Or we're so big.
So
I mean, a left versus a right, if that left means something is basically what I'm saying.
Okay, so when he blew up his own country, the last surviving monarch sent assassins after him fairly often. So they had to deal with that. But I wrote a side scene that one of the PCs was present for, so that's why I wrote it out, that it's actually like 20 pages. It was the Dragon Moot. All of the ancient dragons of the region, regardless of whether they were chromatic or metallic, got together to have a meeting about this explosion and these PCs and discuss their response and what they intended to do about it. And there was political stuff that was involved, and because one of the PCs was present, he got to read all of that in its entirety and then describe it to the other players and be like, guys, we're pissing off big powers. There's problems here. And when the level of influence players had, a former roommate of mine set a scale up that I've used ever since. If you're like level 1 to 5, you are a local champion. Like, let's use a sports metaphor. That is like the captain of the high school football team. Locally famous, locally important, a big deal in his own sphere. You get to level 6 to 10, now you're a regional big deal. Like, that's like the college football player. That's the everybody in the area knows you and you have a bigger influence. You get to level 11 to 16 and now you're a national player, NFL level. The things you do involve national level stuff. Kingdoms know who you are. And if you're above like 16 to 20, now you're casting spells that alter reality itself. Like, people off planet are aware of your existence. Planar entities are interested in what you're doing and why. You can have gods sending their champion to get your attention to do their thing or to stop you from doing your thing, because that's just the level of power you're at. And so I scale what happens to them and who's influencing them and what's going on, largely based on that.
That's a good system.
Yeah, when you talk
And,
about go on.
And like football, when you stop playing, your influence diminishes rapidly.
Yes. If you retire as an adventurer, maybe somebody's going to go track you down to come coach something. Maybe not.
Well, what you're gonna do is start a bar. That's what you do. You start a bar. Eventually, adventurers come in. You are the barkeep. You are a dwarf. You do know the stuff. Your epic weapon is hanging on the mantle.
You buy into a bar that's already started.
That's right. That's right. You propagate the Chain Devil's cookbook and befriend him.
Anyway, with general world stuff, like I have background stuff going on. I have events happening that will influence the world. but I don't make it more than vague unless the players get involved. And even when I write out a history, like I told you the Giants blew up, I did not decide how the Giants blew up until it became relevant to a session.
See, I understand that. You and I have a similar way of way of running. Now, here's the thing. What if it's a mystery game? So, for example, the Red Writ, which is our primary campaign on Mondays. They are essentially sleuths. It's basically a Call of Cthulhu game, just run in Dreadlore. The Dreadlore system, for those that don't know what that is. And there's a lot of player activity and player decision, deciding where that plot goes. But it's a mystery game. So how do you attack, or do you even run mystery games? Not games that incorporate mystery, but an actual sleuthing game.
I have never run an actual sleuthing game.
I see.
That requires my knowing how long this game is going to go. Am I going to regularly have the same people solving puzzles? I have to develop the mystery, and I have to know that I'm going to be available frequently enough that people do not forget what's going on. And at the stage my kids are at, and my life in general, that's not something I can commit to and do well. I don't like to do things like that. If I know what something takes to do it well, and I know I'm not going to be able to do it, I'm going to let somebody who can do so. For just general information for everybody, I wear this hat and glasses because I have a visual impairment. I need these to function.
You need the hat? Is that for extraneous light?
That's for the light coming over the
I see.
lenses.
Yeah.
And the lenses filter out what I see so that my world almost holds still. That means I have a really hard time reading, and I have a really hard time. I have X amount of time that I can function before it's just going to stop, and when it stops, it is just done. I have, as a person, adapted to that by committing to things that I know I can get done before shutdown inevitably happens. Because it's not just I can put on the extra night oil and keep going. If my eyes turn off, I'm done. So my career decisions have featured adapting to that. My gaming style functions with adapting to that. And part of it is I only commit to the things that I know I'm going to be able to finish well, or that, like a long meandering epic game, it's going to go where it's going to go. 60 to 80% of that game was fallout from player decisions playing out.
Right.
When they blew up a region, a lot happened. When they broke into a Githyanki vault and freed a demigod, that demigod was around wrecking havoc. In the new game, that demigod is in charge of what used to be the capital of the Giants. Because they got him loose, and they got the Duke of that town, the Cloud Giant, to pull a card from the deck of many things, and he pulled the one that makes somebody in the world your enemy.
Uh-oh.
He made this ogre demigod, who actually was a former PC of mine, made him his enemy, and he's like, it's an ogre. They're at the bottom of the ordning. What's he going to do to me? Well, he deposed him and wrecked his city. So player decisions made major alterations to the world. The final session of that game, they solved the problem that caused the maelstrom in the Sundersea. So the big eldritch storm spawning swirl in the ocean is gone. And the new game, they're all level 5, but they're on a ship sailing around on that sea where now a bunch of pirate factions have taken up residence. Because there's a lot more trade. There's a lot more to steal. And there are a lot of people who no longer have bosses after the players and player consequences got rid of their bosses, and now they need a new job. So they're pirates.
It does sound like these would be really cool books.
They could become cool books, but that would require my sitting down and writing them and publishing them.
Dictated, not written. It's interesting stuff. In we'll talk to you other three who are sitting there. What do you all think about this? About what he's saying?
I agree. I think it would make an interesting book.
That's what I was saying. What about what
Yeah.
he was saying?
No, the consequences, like, I think that's cool. I would like to go and see what happens to the Richmond Fey world 10, 15 years after our adventures. I think that's a really interesting aspect of what repercussions happen long term. And in the Richmond Fey game, we got to see some of that because we were gone sometimes for 5 years because of time dilation stuff. But I think that's a cool idea. I like that in storytelling. The whole idea of taking the same group of characters or the same cast but different characters to see what the world has become, I think is a cool idea.
Sounds like you're
one
using story
thing
to make
that,
backstory.
It did make the backstories a lot easier since they'd already been there. One thing that big book series and big movie things repeatedly have a problem with is if you solve the big thing, you've beaten up the Death Star, you fixed the world, and next generation is just immediately broken again with something even bigger, it feels like, why did I even go on the journey before if the world was just going to be wrecked again to make the next story? And I kind of hate that. I find that really frustrating. There should be new problems, different things, not, oh, we thought we fixed the world, but no, we actually made it more broken, ha ha ha. So, like, that's part of why we scaled back down to level 5 and dealing with pirates. Maybe we'll get all the way back up to big epic scale things and we'll deal with other continents, but, like, I've also set it up for myself so that underneath this ocean, when the Giants' capital was there, they used massive amounts of blood magic to operate portals to other worlds. And they're going to be able to reopen some of these portals with other magic. They don't have to sacrifice tons of people to do it. But it's going to open up, if we get to the point of, oh no, big world-saving things, that's not going to be on Pearl. Pearl's already saved. They're going to go somewhere else. And then it doesn't undermine the story they've already experienced. It's now a related, maybe equal scale, but it's not undoing the previous campaign.
It's an interesting idea, and it seems to fit with the class-based systems as well, because the stories are about these sort of epic, journeys that the characters are headed towards. Maybe they're not epic themselves, but they're kind of headed that direction. When it comes to a game like a myth game, or not a myth game, sorry, a mystery game, or a horror game, I think this is one of the reasons that a level-based system such as D&D, I think it can work, but it makes it difficult. Because who you start at the beginning, your character, as they gain experience or whatever, part of the game is getting more power, right? Like, not just more characterization. For example, again, going back to Alien, Ripley doesn't get more powerful, right? You could say, oh, she gains skills in Aliens, and she becomes more of a badass, but not really. She's already a badass.
Yeah, her hit point total didn't go up exponentially over time.
Her to hit didn't go up. She didn't just gain a bunch of, like, basically game-breaking skills and special abilities. No, she just got some training, some know-how, and her character was able to adapt. So she's not until you get to the fourth one, which is not a good movie in my opinion. This is my point. Like, having a system that can adapt to that. Now, you can play D&D and have, like, the milestone thing, where you're like, okay, well, when they get to a certain point, they should be level 8. And so they're really not going to get to that until they're in the right spot. But then you have problems like you mentioned, where let's say they do all this stuff, they go about, they have this awesome game, ton of extraneous stuff, and they gain levels and they gain power. Or if you don't want them to do that, they gain artifacts, the sun sword, whatever. Then they go through a portal and you have another game. Well, they're level 15. And 5th edition has a really hard time dealing with that. You can do it, but the kinds of games that you deal with, not just 5th edition, 3.5, 3.0 has problems dealing with that. 2nd ed, all of them have problems dealing with that.
3.5 was a little better at the epic stuff because they had stronger monsters.
Right.
With 5e, when you get to high level, combat basically comes down to who shoots first. Like, they took out a lich in a turn once because he was at the bottom of the key.
Right.
And he didn't get to do anything to them. Except his reaction rolls. So, like, a little bit of damage here, a little bit of damage there, but they wrecked him.
Yeah.
And dragons, it's the same way. Like, it just depends on who shoots first. Even with the big ones. We ran a session where they had to escort the Tarrasque down a canyon.
Oh, no.
They lived through it. They made it work, but the 5e Tarrasque, long as you keep your distance, you can slowly whittle him down.
Yeah.
Now, I did have a fairy barbarian land on its face and try to wail on it. And he did a lot of... it was an interesting build. He did a lot of damage, but then he got below half his hit points and freaked out and tried to run away, and it wrecked him.
Yeah, never run away. Not in D&D anyway. Never split the party and never run. Or that version of D&D.
Well, what my party... what they figured out how to do by that point is use their world-altering powers to deal with things outside of combat. We had very few level 20 combats because they had figured out that if a monster is that high up, most of the time, they're at least semi-reasonable. And they just found other ways to deal with the problems or other solutions. The final session, I had this epic thing planned out between the avatar of Annam, god of the giants, and this great worm dragon that I had given extra powers to. And they had been an incorporeal thing causing the Eldritch Storm in this long-term battle. And there had been sessions where they brought it in, but that's a whole other story. But in this final session, the party had a bard with glibness as a spell and a lot of absurd stuff. And it was supposed to be a 3-way fight between the dragon, the giant, and the party. And instead, they used their charisma to convince the dragon and the giant to have a duel while the party sat on as the arbiters of the duel. And so I had my son was there. I think he was 8 at the time. He rolled for the giant. One of the players took the dragon. There were the other players present. I gave them the opportunity of, do you want to run the giant? Do you want to... Like, I tried to make them as included as possible, but they just wanted to sit back and watch. So one player did the dragon, my son and I ran the giant, and this epic clash happened while they sat back and watched. Didn't even engage. Until the very end, when the giant